Welcome to the last part of the video for this month, and I'm still talking about the power of knowledge part 3. The power of knowledge part 3. So we have said that it takes a heart for knowledge to learn, it takes humility to learn, it takes discipline to learn, and it takes diligence to learn. So those are 4 major ways, major areas, major steps that I think it takes, that I submit to you, that if you have, you will actually be able to acquire the desired knowledge in whatever field of endeavor. And now I want to go to the last part of this discussion on the power of knowledge, and that is what you now need to do with the acquired knowledge. What do you do with knowledge? So remember where we started from at the beginning in February, where I said I will talk about 4 major things. I will talk about the introduction, I'll talk about the significance of knowledge, the different types of knowledge, then I'll talk about what it takes to acquire knowledge and what to do with knowledge, right? And remember as well, I also mentioned that knowledge is not the same thing as wisdom. Knowledge is different from wisdom. But however, knowledge is a raw material, is a prerequisite for wisdom, if we may put it like that. And this is where maybe some people have problem with people that appear to be knowledgeable, and you cannot see the proofs or the results in their lives, because they seem to know so much, but their lives do not actually reflect what they seem to know. What is the missing link most of the time? That is what I want to share with you this time around. So what do we do with knowledge? I've acquired this knowledge that you're talking about. What do I then do with it? Now, there are 5 things that I will share, and I believe this will make a whole lot of difference for somebody with regards to what we are talking about. Now, the very first thing that we'll talk about is that after acquiring knowledge, or when you acquire knowledge, when you acquire a particular information, what is the first thing that you need to do with it? And the first thing is not even action. It's not even action. It's not acting on the knowledge. The first thing that you do need to do from the perspective of God is that you do need to test that knowledge. Test that knowledge. Why are we talking about testing knowledge? Now, most of the nonsense or errors that people get into, you also discover that they got them from some sources. Even the wrong things that people learn, they learn them from some sources, but they did not subject them to test. That's why in the Bible, in 1 Thessalonians 5:21, it says to test all things and hold fast to that which is true or that which is good. You know what that means? That means there are some things you will learn that may not be true. But if you don't test them, you will not know that they are not true. There are some information, some ideas that you will get from people that may not be true. But if you do not subject such to test, you will not know, and you may be working with wrong information, with wrong ideas. So this is why the idea of testing knowledge is very significant, right? That some of the wrong ideas that people have about evolution and things like that, somebody started by what they read. So it is important that we understand the need to test knowledge, to subject knowledge to test. Now, when we talk about testing, you can begin to actually ask questions like, is this the truth? Maybe you have read or learned something about finances, about investments, about property acquisition, for example, or about exercise, about raising children. The first thing you want to ask is this the truth? Is this the truth? And when you begin to question like that, how can you be sure that what they are saying is the truth? What evidence can you see? What evidence of it can you see in maybe the life of the person talking about it, or around the life of the person talking about it, or in other people around you, right? So you want to begin to ask questions. Is this the truth? Are there proofs? Right? So in science, for example, nothing, no matter how great any idea may be, if you cannot test it, if you cannot verify it, if you cannot attest to it that it is true, you discard it. Even the Bible talk about the word of God being tested. So if God subject his own word to test, how can you as a person claim to have a particular information, a particular knowledge, and you don't want it to be subject to test? This is why some people have problems. They seem to know. They want to push what they know on other people. And when you actually ask them, or when you begin to subject what they claim to know to test, you see a lot of errors, and then they get into all sorts of self-defense and things like that. So it is important that we subject what we know or what we have acquired to test. So we ask questions. Is this the truth? right? What is the source of this idea? Well, what is the source of this knowledge? What is the source of this information? Somebody has a problem, maybe with their husband or their wife in a marriage, and then they went to talk to somebody and say, oh, all men are like that. If I were you, I would just pack out. You've not asked the question. This person asked, giving me this suggestion, giving me this idea. Why are they saying that? What is the result? What is the proof they have in their life? Right? But you just take the information that they have shared with you, hook, line, and sinker, and you go and act on it, and it becomes problematic for you. No. So this is why it is important for us as individuals to actually subject what we hear. This is why in the Bible also Jesus says you should take it to what you hear and to how you hear, right? So it is important that you test the information that you're getting, the idea that you're receiving, whether it's secular knowledge, whether it's general knowledge, or specific knowledge about a particular area of life. And this is very important in this age, that you can almost say there is an overload of information in this age. There is an overload of information, sometimes contradictory information. Almost everybody has their own idea about God, for example. Almost everybody has their own idea about what is right, what is wrong, and things like that. How can you ensure that you're still safe? How can you ensure that you're still holding fast to the truth? It is by this subject of testing of knowledge. Almost everyone is an expert, quote and unquote, online. Almost everyone is an expert online. If you check all sorts of things that people post, and then some people just consume this information and they become victims of falsehood as a result, right? So you can think about experts that are not certified, that are not professional. So where did they get their expertise from, for example? Where they don't have proofs, they don't have evidence for what they are saying. Where did they get the knowledge from? But some people will not bother to actually subject such information to test, or such knowledge to test. So almost everyone is sharing their personal experiences. Almost everyone has one thing to say about one area of life or the other. But what is important is that people should be wise enough to subject this knowledge, this information to test. So I say, for example, there is so much knowledge around, but there is also so much confusion around. There is so much knowledge and there is so much confusion because everybody just shares their own opinion, and they think that should be the standard for everybody. I remember a funny story I like to share, that when we had our first child, because myself and my wife, we were new parents, we didn't know anybody, we didn't have help, and all sorts of people came with all sorts of ideas about all sorts of things to do. Some will say, oh, if the child is having this particular symptom, this is what you need to do, or if this is the best soap to use, or the whatever. All sorts of ideas, conflicting ideas most of the time. And at the end of the day, you now discover that each one is just coming up with their own idea, with their own opinion. There is no gold standard, so to speak. So you are left with like an avalanche of information, and some of them may actually end up confusing you rather than giving you direction, right? So this is why we are talking about testing knowledge. That an advice that a piece of information is free does not mean the consequences of such are free. I take that again. That somebody gives an idea for free, renders their services to you for free, does not mean the consequences of taking such advice, taking such counsel will be free. So you do need to be mindful of not just any advice that you receive, or of not just any information, or just not just any knowledge that you receive, but the consequences of such. That if I take this step, or if I act on the basis of what this person has said, what will be the consequences, and will I be the one to suffer the consequences? And if you are not very confident or comfortable with that, you might want to search further. And again, this is why knowledge is important. This is why humility is important, rather. It's not just that you are questioning everybody, you are defensive. No, but you are assessing. There's a difference between assessing things and just questioning things with a defensive attitude, with an attitude that says, oh, I know better than you, and things like that. No, you are just trying to be as objective as possible about the different information, the different ideas that you have before you actually take steps. So subject what you hear, subject what you learn to different tests. Right? It says that you should test all things, hold fast to what is good. That means discard what is not true. Discard what is not true, right? It also means part of what you hear, part of what you learn may not be true. Even, I'm sorry to say, even in a church setting, part of the things that your pastor may tell you may not be true. So someone said, that's blasphemy. No, in Acts 17:11, even in the days of the Acts of the Apostle, the Bible talk about the believers that they were searching the scriptures to see whether the things they heard were so. They were searching. So it wasn't that they went to church and then they just took everything the pastor said maybe as a deputy God. No, they went home and then they searched again. They subject what they heard from their pastors, from their apostles, if you like, to test. So he said they were more fair-minded because they searched the scriptures to see whether those things they learned were so. So that means it's possible for you to learn some things that are not so, that are not true, even in the sight of God, and you pick them up in church, and you won't know. And you may be regurgitating those ideas or even passing the same on to other people. So this is why some of us have problems maybe sharing our faith with unbelievers or people that claim not to believe God. Because some of the things that we know or we claim to know ourselves, they are just things that are passed down to us. They are not based on things that are on testable, verifiable truth of scriptures. So it becomes difficult for us to be able to defend them when they are subject to rigorous screening, rigorous testing, so to speak. So he said, but these Christians were not like that. They subject the things they heard to testing. They searched, they checked by themselves to see whether those things were so. And that was actually a commendable thing in the sight of God in the New Testament there. So he said they were more fair-minded because that is, they were open. They did not just accept everything and just dump it on others like that. They subject what they heard, they search what they heard to verify what is true and what is not true. In other words, so that somebody is merely telling you their experience or whatever does not mean that is the truth. You do need to check. You do need to actually subject these things to test. Maybe what they are saying is their own experience, but maybe there are contradictory evidence to what they are saying. Right? So that somebody is sharing their own encounters, quote and unquote, does not mean they are sharing God's principles for you as a person, for example, or does not even mean they are sharing generally applicable principles. Right? You test what you have learned, what you have acquired. And then when you can see that, oh, there are proofs, right? Or that this thing hold fast or hold true against these standards, then you can begin to apply them to your life or begin to take steps on the basis of such things that you have learned or that you have acquired. This is very, very significant, and it will safeguard you from errors. It will help you from actually acting on wrong information, because if you act on wrong information, most likely you cannot get right result, right? Wrong information, wrong action, wrong steps, and eventually wrong result. And the same is also true if you get right information, you test it that this is actually right, this is genuine, and then you act on it, there is no way you will not get the right result. Now, our time is fast spent, unfortunately, and I would like to draw the curtain on this month's edition of the School of Wisdom. So I've talked about what it takes to acquire knowledge. I've also started the discussion on what we need to do with this knowledge, with this information. When we acquire them, we need to test it. So don't just come and push things on people, or that God has spoken to me. You may be wrong. You may even mishear. You may misinterpret, misunderstand what God has spoken to you. You may see visions and your vision may be wrong. You may see visions and your interpretation of it may be wrong. I remember a pathetic story about 3 different people. All of them had the same dream about somebody getting married to another person. The 3 of them had the same day. I had the same dream. You had the dream and they thought that was just the go ahead. That was just all. And of course, the 2 people got married, and in no time the marriage scattered. Right? So test all things. Subject what you learn or what you have acquired to test. And it's not just about a mismatch of tests. Now, we're not talking about maybe testing spiritual knowledge with physical understanding or with natural understanding. No, we're just talking about the rigors it takes, for example, to subject spiritual knowledge maybe to the truth of the Word of God, to subject generic knowledge to what you can see around you, to information you can see around you. When somebody share a particular information with you, you check, you cross-check. Is this the truth? Do they have proofs? Can they point to others that have applied the same, and you can see the result in their lives as well? When you begin to do that, there is absolutely no way you will not be safe. So we are talking about being safe first before you even go ahead to take steps. Remember what they say, better be safe than sorry. So this is why we're talking about subjecting knowledge to test. So this will be a convenient point, like I've said, for us to draw the curtain this month. Thank you so much for tuning in. If this has blessed you, please like it, subscribe to the channel, and then share it with several other people. Let them be blessed by it, and the name of the Lord will continue to be blessed, to be glorified. And of course, if you do have questions about getting your work with God right, for example, or other things about what I've shared with you, the email address is in the description box. If you send me an email, I'll be happy to answer whatever question you may have. Now, in terms of our next meeting will actually take place in May the 19th, Friday, May 19th. And I'll be talking about the last part of this discussion on the power of knowledge. So May the 19th, 2023, I'll be talking about the power of knowledge, part 4. Thank you so much. God bless you, and see you next time.